back in 2004, John Tavares at the age of 14 would light the GTHL on fire. His domination was so absurd that the CHL, more specifically the OHL, would have to introduce the exceptional status rule. And that, if there's a player who is playing far above their age, they can be declared exceptional and join the CHL at a much younger age.
Shot scores! Connor Bedard has arrived here at the Brandt Center as first in the Western Hockey League.
Tavares will be drafted first overall in the OHL draft, where he would become one of the most prolific scorers in league history. As Tavares was the face of Ontario hockey. So when you consider that this season, the Maple Leafs would take a nosedive in the standings, there was a legitimate chance that the Leafs could draft Tavares. However, they would start winning games in the final stretch, which took away their odds at winning the Tavares sweepstakes. And after spending 18 years playing in the province of Ontario, growing up as a diehard Leafs fan, Tavares would be drafted by the Islanders. And this right here is a very common story. A player grows up in Ontario, they're most likely a Leafs fan. They dream of playing for Toronto, but end up at another franchise. In fact, it's actually really common. Really common. On this graphic, we have an NHL player heat map of North America. Each dot represents a concentration for a specific area where NHL players are born. Purple shows a relatively smaller concentration, red shows a bigger concentration, and the white dots mean that a large portion of the league is from that one area. And as we can see, yes, places like New York, Boston, or maybe Montreal has produced a lot of talent. However, the province of Ontario is on a completely different level. For some perspective, relative to all of Canada, as of 2024, Ontario produced 44.1% of all NHL players. Quebec is in second at 15%, Alberta at 12.9%, BC at 11.5%, and then it drops from there. And if we include all of the world, Ontario still makes up around 18% of all active players. Think about the optics here. This means that nearly 1 of every 5 players in the NHL were born in Ontario. So Ontario alone nearly makes up more NHL players than Sweden, Russia, and Finland combined. This past season, 12 players on the Oilers were from Ontario. That's 57% of their team. Even players not from Ontario, like the Hughes brothers, would grow up in Ontario playing in the GTHL. There is no other professional league in North America that carries this high of a concentration in a single location. It's absurd, but okay, Rob, we get it. Ontario makes a lot of hockey players. What's the big deal? Well, this right here is the foundation to what is the Toronto Maple Leaf effect. In the 9 years Tavares spent playing for the Islanders, before leaving in free agency, joining his hometown team, Tavares, when facing Toronto in New York, would have a 0.5 point per game average. So honestly, not that great, as his career point per game average is 0.94, so nearly half of his career average. So you would think him facing off his childhood team in New York would lead to increased scoring. But no, this phenomenon only applies when they are back home playing in Toronto.
But in there, cuts in! Tavares shoots, scores! What a goal by John Tavares! Unbelievable! With mom and dad looking on, Tavares wows the crowd.
Because, and get this, when Tavares is back in Toronto, with his friends, his family members in the stands, this man scored at a 1.26 point per game rate. So not only did he smash his career point per game averages, but he would more than double his points against the Leafs when playing in Toronto. But okay, Rob, this is one player. No, it's not. When Connor McDavid faces the Leafs in Edmonton, he has an even 1 point per game average. But in Toronto, McDavid has a 2.14 points per game average. If McDavid averaged 2.14 points per game, he would be on track to surpass Wayne Gretzky as the greatest scorer of all time. Ladies and gentlemen, the Toronto Maple Leaf effect.
Morgan Riley. McDavid. What a move! What a play! What a goal!
First goal in Toronto, and you'll remember that one.
They're getting the chances they want. They just got to execute.
Here's McDavid all the way. Scores!
But no, it doesn't stop there. Steven Stamkos nearly doubles his career average against Toronto. Claude Giroux sees a big jump. Wayne Gretzky would also see a massive jump versus his career point per game average. Hell, to show you just how absurd this phenomenon is, Paul Bissonnette, This guy, born and raised in Ontario, and of course a big Leafs fan, a big Leafs homer, would play a total of 202 games in the NHL, where he would score 7 goals. And in his career, Biz would only get one chance to play Toronto at home, where of course his friends and family were in attendance. And in his one career game,
Keith Yandel with a wrist shot, he scores! Bissonnette was screening in front. I don't know if he got a piece of that.
with a grand total of 5 minutes and 57 seconds of ice time, Bissonnette would score the game-winning goal. But okay, maybe I just cherry-picked a couple star players and their stats against their hometown team. Actually, I didn't. If we take a look at the entire Blackhawks roster, it paints a better picture. Because of their roster, they had 7 forwards from Ontario: Andreas Athanasiou, Jason Dickinson, Mackenzie Entwistle, Taylor Hall, Corey Perry, Boris Tkachuk, and Taylor Radish. And aside from Hall, none of these players are star caliber guys. In fact, they would combine for a .33 points per game average this season, which is a 27-point pace in 82 games. And even though the Blackhawks were the second worst team in the league, these players in Toronto would average a 1.125 point per game average, which is, and get this, a 92-point pace. So over 3 times their average when playing against Toronto. And some of you may be like, okay, Taylor Hall popped off. No, he didn't, as he was actually the only player who didn't have a point. Not only are the top players from the top teams dominating when they go back home to Toronto, but one of the worst teams in the league are punching far above their weight class when playing the Leafs in Toronto. On this graphic, we have the Leafs' home goals against from 2017 up until 2024. Okay, and this line right here represents the team that finished in the same place as the standings as the Leafs in each season. And as we can see, aside from Vegas, ironically enough, Toronto has let in far more goals each season when playing on home ice. Think about the optics here. No matter who the Leafs faced at home, there will be several players on the other team who are treating their trip to Toronto as a home game. Entire sections of the arena are sold out to the other team's players' families. So even when it's a Leafs home game, it's also a home game for much of the opposition. Now, I'm not saying that this is an excuse for Toronto as a franchise. It's not. But what it does do is highlight the fascinating world of sports psychology. When players feel the energy of being back in their hometown, going up against a team they idolized growing up with family and friends in the stands, it has a direct correlation to that player being more clutch. Because Ontario-born players make up nearly a fifth of the league, no other city has to face this onslaught of scoring more against their hometown team than the Leafs. Ever since the signing of John Tavares, Toronto has been caught in a rut in their inability to sign their players to team-friendly deals, if not having to overpay, which makes you think, why in the hell is this happening? As all of the players have routinely voiced that not only are they happy in Toronto, but they don't want to leave. So how is this not enough? The answer is simple. The taxation in Canada is far more than many American teams. Leafs players are taxed at approximately 46%. A $10 million contract equates to $5.4 million. If that same player is in Florida or Texas, they would make an additional $1 million per year. I would love to see the Canadian government address this. Now, if anyone should be paying taxes, I would much rather have an NHL player making tens of millions of dollars pay when compared to a single mother. I think we can all agree with that. But on the other hand, there is a real argument surrounding the idea of entertaining your country and keeping them happy, as hockey is Canada's pastime. Yet, we haven't had a cup since 1993. The government already invests so much money in programs to keep the country entertained, so why not hockey? Why not reduce or eliminate provincial tax rate on professional athletes, which would allow for more team-friendly deals and propel Canada to success, which would then allow Canadian teams to compete with low, if not tax-free states? Which, keep in mind, teams that have no state tax have been to the finals 7 times in the last 5 years. This is not a coincidence. Bring Canada a championship. Make the people of Canada happy in a time where the nation is frustrated. Yes, investing in the economy from a federal or provincial perspective to push Canada out of this recession is the priority, but so is keeping the country happy. However, Canada currently has 7 teams in the NHL, so we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars in tax revenue solely from player salaries. So during a 4-year term for a prime minister, we are talking about well over $1 billion in tax revenue. This tax revenue could create roughly 50 new elementary elementary schools in Canada. So it's a tough argument, and I understand the Canadian government from that perspective. However, the amount of money generated from a deep Canadian playoff run cannot be understated. According to an economic impact study conducted by Explore Edmonton, the Oilers' playoff run would generate $280 million for the city of Edmonton, when the passion of a Canadian hockey city is at an all-time high. Due to the success of their team, not only is morale boosted for the entire area, if not country, but there's an indirect effect of creating a massive boost for the local economy, specifically for small business. And I can't imagine what this number would be for a city like Toronto due to the population and passion of the Leafs fan base. So you can make the argument that a deep playoff run from a Canadian team has far more benefits than the taxes generated from player contracts. In fact, it literally has more benefits. Edmonton last season had a cap hit of $84.9 million. So let's just say $85 million. The provincial tax rate on that $85 million would be 15%, which equals $12.75 million. Which, keep in mind, this is best scenario, as this doesn't include the fact that players would be putting money away for retirement or having to pay escrow. So tell me what's better for the economy and morale of the people, $280 million or 12.75? But okay, let's think about this purely from a tax revenue perspective. 15% of $280 million is $42 million generated, or 3.3 times more than the revenue generated from player salaries. So imagine if most Canadian teams were competitive. This number would be far, far greater. But with that being said, provincial taxes are a guaranteed source of revenue to fund projects and programs for the people of that province. But there's a good argument here for the entertainment and country morale, the upside of boosting your local economy. But okay, that's one factor. Another variable is the cost of living. Now, I don't want to bring politics into this channel. Yes, I follow politics, but I'm just some guy who talks hockey, so keep that in perspective. But the way I view it, if Canada has a liberal government, in this case, Trudeau, I feel like the big benefit of this government for the people of Canada is keeping the cost of living affordable. Strong-arm companies like Loblaws into providing affordable groceries, instead of their executives making millions of dollars alone in stock options and bonuses. The inherent benefit of a liberal government is the ability to protect your people against big corporations through regulation. Now, for a millionaire hockey player, does the cost of groceries really matter? No, probably not. But the entire picture, that includes taxes, gas, vehicles, housing, everything that makes up cost of living, will without a doubt be seen as a deterrent to many players when deciding which team and/or country to go to. Think about this. A 3-bedroom condo within 20 minutes of the Toronto Arena costs upwards of $2 million. A house could be between $2 and $3 million, if not just astronomically more. So relative to a place like Florida, you can get a nice 3-bedroom house in a paradise in North America for, $500 grand, but this may not even be the biggest factor for players, because Toronto, the GTA, is the biggest hockey market in the world due to the sheer size of their fan base. Toxic fans leading to toxic media is inevitable. Are they all toxic? Absolutely not. But because of their sheer size, it's just gonna happen. As it's been said by prior Leafs, that leaving the team is like leaving a war zone, which, to be honest, is very dramatic. You're a millionaire hockey player, suck it up. But if you look at the whole picture here, combining the verbal abuse of some fans and the media, taxes, cost of living, it has without a doubt led to players refusing to take nothing less than what they would command in free agency. Has also led to the Leafs being unable to retain up-and-coming stars or players they traded for. In fact, as I covered in a recent video, if you make a team out of players the Leafs lost in the last 5 or so years, not only does that team have less salary cap, but they outscored this current Leafs roster across the board, even after a 69-goal season from Matthews, as it's truly absurd. But here's the thing I'll say about the Leafs and all Canadian teams. Given all the variables I just mentioned, is it even possible for a Canadian team or several teams to succeed? Absolutely, as we just saw in Oilers' Game 7 Stanley Cup final this past season. However, that comes with the caveat that these teams need to have near flawless team construction. Imagine the Oilers without $14.25 million tied into Darnell Nurse and Jack Campbell. Yes, they had a slam dunk with the Hyman and Leon Draisaitl contracts, but the cap hit of Nurse and Campbell basically erased that advantage. An extra $14 million redirected into better deals and depth could have easily pushed Edmonton to win the cup. But here's the thing, for the first time in a very long time, we are seeing a significant increase to the salary cap, and especially for the Canadian teams who locked in their franchise player or players in the past couple years. They will now have a guaranteed window to create championship caliber depth. Now, back to Toronto. I would love to see a Mitch Marner trade. Shake up the organization, maybe bring in that star defenseman, but if they do keep him, he must take a team-friendly deal, and if not, you're gone. If you truly love Toronto playing there, do it for the people. Ideally, Tavares takes a massive pay decrease. The man has made his money, so sign for $3 million, as the cap increase has given the Leafs a great chance to make the team they were hoping to make before the pandemic flattened the cap. But what do you think? Can the Leafs surpass the hurdles that are taxes, cost of living, toxic media all leading to contract issues, on top of having to deal with the Toronto Maple Leaf effect? Comment down below, what should this team do? And as always, thanks for watching.